Hello everyone, my name is Muir and this is Starsector version 0.95.1 ARC6. And this is the Longbow Dagger Condor Bomber. So, what is this actually good at doing? Well, it has a dagger torpedo bomber, it has a longbow kinetic bomber, and what this means is that these will help to peel back enemy armor and these will do a lot of armor damage. These are really useful. We're sort of taking two specialists here and we're putting them together. Now, this has really no major way to deal with enemy fighters. It has two Vulcan cannons, which will eventually kill enemy fighters, and it has a pylon, a long-range missile launcher. It doesn't have any hull mods or anything like that, and well, its capacitors and vents are, but it doesn't have any. Everything's spent on these. The bright side is it can fire all of its guns and really not have any problems, and it does have the ability to do 2 volleys of Pila. It will most likely just vent right after that. So what's this actually good at? Well, it's a strong support ship, but that's about it. If you have other ships that can tank for this, that can stand in the way, then this can do really well. If it's on its own, however, it's going to struggle. Let's go ahead and throw it up against a Lasher. Now, this is a carrier that is using the idea of doing burst damage. Now, as you know, the game's team seems to work best if you're not actually doing burst damage. Here it's working because it can just... The 2 longbows can overpower the Lasher shields, and then the 3 daggers come in and just kill it. So if it can burst them down, it can win. If the Atropos torpedoes can hit them, it can win very easily. But this costs 10 points, and this costs 4. So what happens when we throw it up against equal points? When we throw it up against equal points? Well, like most carriers that are not combat carriers specifically, this doesn't tend to end particularly well. So it can get rid of one of those, but here's the problem. Now it can be attacked directly. And so it starts to have some pretty big problems if it doesn't immediately die. So the Condor, as we can see, it's starting to have some issues. It's starting to get attacked. That one Atropos was kind of needed to take out that other Hound. And this is already becoming way closer than anybody would want. As you can see, because the longbows aren't able to take out aren't able to cut through the shields of the whatever that's called, the Lasher, it's going to have problems. But if the Lasher keeps screwing around instead of going in for the kill, then maybe those longbows would be able to get their attacks off. But it doesn't look like that's probably going to happen. So the Lasher has been given the ability to get a little bit closer. So what needs to happen is the Condor needs to be able to tank just long enough and keep the Lasher at bay just long enough to get its fighters out and turn this into the Condor attacking at full power, because then the longbows can take down the Lasher shields and the Atropos can take it out. And it is seeming to be able to do that for now. It is able to play keep away with the Lasher just for long enough. And it's going to be hitting that critical mass pretty soon if this Lasher doesn't go in there. That is the advantage of pylons. It does tend to freak out enemy frigates, despite the fact that they could just tank it on their shields and keep going. But what's going to happen? Is it going to make it? Is it going to cut this guy down? Probably not. But maybe. Doesn't look like it. But who knows? Okay, those have completely burned out. But it's having a problem. Lasher's having an issue. And that is, the longbows and the daggers are able to get to where they are fully ready. And it looks like this is just going to be a bit of a stalemate. Now, unfortunately for the Lasher, that means that unless it can go in and get lucky, the Condor is going to start CRing out after, well, after the Lasher does. Which means that the Lasher is very much in danger. Okay, it is venting. So this fight is just going to go on now for a while. We'll wait for one more salvo to see if anything happens, and then we will just assume that the Lasher would eventually CR out and die. Yeah, Lasher will just eventually CR out while staying away from the Condor and then eventually be destroyed. So the Condor can technically win that fight. But what about something in its own weight class? A Hammerhead is the same cost. How well does it do 1v1 that? Now if this Condor was using the medley setup, it would most likely win this fight. The broadswords would bring down the shields, and the what are they called? The broadswords would be able to bring down the shields, and the warthogs would do enough damage. But as you can see here, even if everything goes perfectly, they don't have the punching power to punch this guy's shields down. So unless they can do it under what may be ideal circumstances, they can do a little bit of damage. So, if this Hammerhead never moves closer, if the Condor never loses fighters, that seems like it lost a longbow, and if the Hammerhead is never able to get closer, then the Condor can win. That tends to be how this goes. We'll wait for one more salvo, see what happens if the Condor gets any closer, but it seems to be sort of just screwing around, and now it's time for everyone to go. Yep, and well, there goes that. So the Condor is most likely going to eventually win that fight. But alright. Against two Lashers. And we'll say one of these. Why not? Go on. Do your thing. You're not good at actually destroying things your size. But maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to do something. So we have two shielded ships. And one long-range ship. And we already have a problem here, because the Condor's shields are down. Now, because it is based on burst damage... Oh! Well, there that goes. So, with that in mind, the Condor will eventually win this one. So how well does this do against something that is intended to chase those down? Actually, how well does it do against enemy carriers? Let's take a really crappy enemy carrier. And now we're using a Condor against Condor. But instead of going burst damage, we're going to go for fighters. How well does it do? Against the worst fighters in the game. It doesn't look like it managed to do any damage to the enemy Condor. And it is slowly... well, it's not really clearing the enemy Talons all that well. It's taking them a lot longer than it ideally would. Right, one of the daggers has gone down. It's only two daggers, then more than likely those won't be able to take down that enemy Condor's shields. And as you can see, the green is starting to get less than bright green on our bomber Condor. So we're starting to have a problem here. And really this is boiling down to the whole argument of burst damage versus sustained damage. If you do sustained damage, then you're generally doing then you can generally damage enemy ships that you're not able to just punch down immediately. If you do burst damage, well, you need to, and this can't even burst down, well, it can burst down a lasher, but sometimes, but it's not consistent. You run into a problem where you need to be able to burst them down, but you might not be able to. And so here, the Condor with the Talons will win their sustained damage. They are slowly but surely dealing damage to our poor Condor. So what does that mean? That means that combat carriers should probably have some sort of fighters on them. Like, that's why the medley builds on the Drover, Mora, and Legions all work amazingly well. Those ships are able to be dangerous, hence they're able to use fighters that can take down a lot of things and do sustained damage, keep people from taking down their shields. However, if it's just by itself, then it needs things that can just flat out kill things, and if that doesn't work, then it starts to have pretty major problems. But this is a good starting support ship. And that's what's important here. It's a good starter support ship. Now, if you wanted to, you could swap this out with, say, anti-fighters missiles. That's also something that you can do to try and give this a little bit more air superiority, but it still is relying on these to burst enemies down. But alright guys, that is sort of your starter Condor. What you can also do, it has a higher damage per second, the Perdition bombers. You could put 2 of those on here and get rid of some of this. And those are better at killing enemy capitals and cruisers, but far, far worse at killing destroyers and frigates, just because those are maneuverable enough to just move out of the way, because those don't track at all. It's also a scenario where if you're using a lot of Perditions, they need to be able to just punch down the enemy shields and do damage. If they can't do that, they're useless. But yeah, that tends to be how that goes. So if you mass them, it could be good, but these massed will be far more effective in the long run. But alright guys, there we go. That is the Dagger Longbow Condor. But just let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Go ahead, leave me a like, comment, subscribing, that bell, and just share the video if you think you would like it, and I will catch you guys